Okay, this is the Stellar of Amosi. Now I'm going to explain to you who the Jews are. The Jews are the Nubians mixed with the Hyksos. You see, the Hyksos adopted a deity. It was an Asiatic deity known as Set. And that was one of their main deities, as well as the Baphomet. So you had the white devils who mixed with the Nubians, or the southern Egyptians, or the upper Wassetans, depending on how you look at it. Now, you have to understand that either the Jews more resemble the Nubians, or they're not Hyksos at all. Either they're Nubians, or the Nubians mixed with Hyksos. Let me explain why. After Kamosi started fighting with the Hyksos to expel them, and the battle was taken on by Amosi the First. Remember, this is the 18th dynasty. He founds the 18th dynasty. You know, Hatshepsut and Akhenaten, etc. So you have Amosi, whose name means the moon is born, and you can look at that on Tour Egypt. In my notes for this video, they're all from Tour Egypt, and it says, you know what I'm saying, that his name means, you know, so it's double checked. The moon is born, because last video I had to edit it because I slipped and said the 25th dynasty when I was really talking about when Nubia started splitting from Egypt, which is right around the time, within 100 years or so of the time that Moses had the Exodus. And a lot of Nubians were slaves in Egypt. So the Nubian slaves mixed with the Hyksos slaves, who were, some of them went to Palestine after they lost, and some of them were assimilated as slaves. And they mixed with the Nubian slaves, and the Jews are Nubian mixed with Hyksos, and that's why you have black Jews to this day, and you also have some whiter looking Jews. But anyway, also, remember I talked about how Tutmosis the first, second, third, just like you have Akhenaten, Amenhotep the first, second, third, fourth in this dynasty. And there's some important people, you know, that a lot of these people died young, like Merit Amun, Tyre, Satamun, Saper, Samen, Ahotep, etc. There's a lot of important people. Okay, besides Ahotep, all those people died at a young age, and Ahotep would go on to be the queen, and it was the third daughter of Amosi. But the problem is that a lot of them had died before they even had a chance to challenge him, and that's why, you know, Cleopatra, and you have you know, you have the whole deal with and you the deal with the princess and the Hittite princess and that whole mess, and you know, there's a lot of conspiracy going on around this time period, all the way up to Cleopatra, is where people are worried about who's going to succeed them, and they start plotting with other people, and it becomes a globalist plot of secret societies to usurp the power of Egypt and to pass it on to the scum, which is what ends up happening. So what you see is that the Jews are Nubian people who were mixed with some of the remnants of the Hyksos, but the proof that the Nubians dominated the scene was that the Hyksos, the proof that the Nubians dominated the scene is that the Hyksos didn't travel their deity. When they made Israel, it was called Isis, Ra, and Elohim. So the Canaanite, the Hyksos people who were fighting with the Jews when they migrated into the Middle East were related to the Jews, but it wasn't the same. Remember, even Moses takes a Cushite wife, and I talk about that in a lot of my videos about how they punished Miriam and Aaron, etc. So, and how the staff comes into play, and how the magicians have their own magic, and they're able to turn the staff into snake, their staffs into snake as well, and they're able to mimic some of the miracles as well. And so when we talk about what's going on here during this time period, you know, is you have the time period of Hammurabi's Code, and you have the 18th and 19th dynasty. So remember, the 25th dynasty ties into this, because if it wasn't for the 25th dynasty, there wouldn't be no prophets of Israel, because the prophets of Israel came about, I'd say about 800 BCE, and the 25th dynasty takes place around that. It starts pretty much. It starts around like 1100 BCE with the struggle to put it in place. Then around 1000 BCE and around 980 BCE, etc. They really established the 25th dynasty. When Egypt's weak, they slide in and take power. That's when Pi, Kashta, Shabaka, Kashta, etc. I told you about all these different Nubian leaders, just like the original guys were Nubian. When I talk about Jer, and I talk about Waj, and Den, and Ajib, etc., and all the original leaders who were Nubians, like Semarkat, okay? Then you have Rahab, and then you have the other ones in the monarchs, okay? So remember, during the Ubaid dynasty in Sumeria, you have the Naqada periods of Egypt, and it's the second Naqada period, which you have the hieroglyphics starting to form in, you know, around 3200 BCE, around then. Okay, and also, you know, I showed you the Naqada. One of my rap songs, I show you the Naqada goddess versus the Nubian goddess versus the Egyptian goddess, and I show you how it's the same thing, it's the same religion. So what happened is the people who championed the religion of Set, the devils, were in charge of Egypt for a while. Then Amosi and Kamosi expelled them, and within 5 dynasties, or within 700 years, excuse me, within 400 years, they have the Nubians are coming into power, all the way till the prophets are exiled in Babylon. So why were the prophets exiled in Babylon? Because the Babylonian dynasties and the foreign dynasties like the Persians are starting to come into play, you know, around 575 and 525 BCE. Okay? So when the Jews returned and the temple was rebuilt in 515, what's going on? You know, you're having a period of kind of enlightenment in Europe. I mean, yeah, in Greece. You have the Greek occupation in 325 and Aristotle's in 350. So understand that it's the Greek schools of thought that are being mixed in with the Jewish ideology that came from Egyptian schools of thought, which came from the Nubian schools of thought. So the source of all these religions is Nubian. The source of the bloodline of the slaves who were the Jews for 400 years, from 1580 BCE to 1200 BCE around, or 1180 BCE around, when Moses had the Exodus. So around 400 years, just like the Bible said, evolved from dust. The only difference is you have to include Africa into the empire of Babylon. You have to call Africa the Garden of Eden. You have to call Nambia and Northeast Africa, Ethiopia, Kenya. You have to call that the Garden of Eden. Because if you don't, then you got it all wrong. And when you talk about the axe, even the symbol of a fascist symbol, what is a fasci? A fasci is an axe with a bunch of sticks bundled together so you have a stronger handle. And who had the axe? The Egyptians. Moses' battle axe. Who had the staff? The Egyptians. What's the relevance between Moses using the staff and turning into a snake? Is that they used the staff to conquer the snake in the temple of Apopis or Apep. So you understand that it starts with the Nubians. It doesn't just start in Egypt. It starts with the sub-Saharan African people who lived in the southern, Sudan, Somalia, Ethiopia, the White and the Blue Nile. We're talking about Uganda, Ethiopia, Central African Republic, Cameroon. It starts with those guys. The knowledge migrates up through the Nile. The people in the Nile Delta who worship Set team up with the Canaanites and the Jews, and when they have their exodus, they've mixed in with enough of the Nubians to have enough of the ancient Nubian knowledge to fool people that God is on their side. And when God starts talking to them, what does he say? He says, I am the God who took the Jews out of Egypt. I'm the God who saved you from these people, those people, let you beat these people, let you take this land, who helped you escape the Egyptians' wrath, etc., etc. So what is he talking about? He's talking about the Pharaoh who embodies one God is arguing with another temple, with the servant of a high priest of another temple within Egypt, and it comes to a head when their magicians, when their servants, when their temple, the temple keepers start arguing amongst each other over whose magic is best, who has embodied the Spirit of God the best. And it comes to a head when the Jews leave and they rejoin the Canaanites or the Hyksos or the Palestinians who had left during the battles that led up to their expulsion in the 15th dynasty in about 1580 BCE. So, what are we talking about here? We're talking about the 25th dynasty. We're talking about the 18th dynasty. We're talking about without the 18th dynasty, the 19th dynasty, the 20th dynasty, the 21st dynasty, the 22nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, you have no Israel. And if you had no Israel, you had no Bible. Okay? Now, look at the time of Joseph and Jacob. Where was Joseph thrown into? A well. Where did he go to? The Nile, the source of the water. He was put in a well. It was like a well in the middle of the desert. It doesn't compare to the Nile. He didn't know much. He was just a boy. He didn't know God. He goes to Egypt, the source of the water of life, the source of truth. He becomes a fucking prophet. He has dreams. He deciphers the dreams for Pharaoh. He doesn't give a shit about his coat anymore because now he's a prophet of God. And why was he a prophet of God? Because he went to Egypt. Now, when you look at the story of Jesus, it's the same thing. Why was he a prophet of God? Because of the epiphany, because of the revelation he had in Egypt. Why was Moses a prophet of God? Because he had killed an Egyptian, symbolizing conquering the Egyptians and taking the spiritual rewards of Egypt, which every nation sought out. That's why Alexander the Great laid in a fucking sarcophagus for 3 days and 3 nights, because he said these Egyptians are onto something. They know everything. This is the source, not Babylon. He didn't lay us in a sarcophagus in Babylon. He died in Babylon because he knew. Because he knew that a bunch of nomadic, illiterate scumbags who were wandering around during the Uruk period of the Middle East in Sumer and Babylon didn't know a fucking thing. That the Talyf culture and the Ubaid culture didn't know a fucking thing. That what inspired Babylon to become an empire. Later, afterwards, Sargon. When was Sargon? When was Sargon? When was Sargon? 2250 BCE. When was Egypt? 3200 BCE. So you're telling me that a bunch of nomadic fucking Sumerians compare to the first dynasty of Egypt and the first 5 in the Old Kingdom when you have huge fucking pyramids? I rest my fucking case.